Welcome, Houston, to Chai Time here on 103.5 Hum FM. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I know my weekend was pretty hectic, but that's okay. It was a good weekend. We have a little puppy now, so she's keeping me on my toes. That's for sure. It's funny because they say that puppies are like babies, and I never really thought about that. And now that I have a little puppy, I'm like, it's literally like having a baby, because you're waking up in the middle of the night checking on them, and they're like not screaming, but they're like wanting your attention. And so it's a bit much, but I love it. Yeah, and joining us today, by the way, is Mahtab and Arwa. Thank you, ladies, for coming on the show today. I'm so happy to have y'all.
Thank you.
It's always so fun to have you guys on the show, and we obviously have some great conversations. And today is also one of the greatest topics that we actually haven't touched on, and it's grief. So let's start. Wait, I'm sorry. I didn't even ask you guys about your weekend. I just went out about my day.
No, it's okay. We're grieving the weekend.
No, why? Canada won. Come on, we have to celebrate.
Of course, as a Canadian in the house.
That goal was amazing. Whoever watched it, it was right at the very end, and they scored that goal. Woo! And actually, the guy who scored the goal, we are talking about grief, right? And he had just lost both his parents, one after the other, a few years ago. And his mom I was reading the story, his mom had breast cancer, and his dad, after a little while, he had a heart attack and he passed away. So although he lost both his parents, he still kept going, and he's the captain. So just his story, and then it just happened at the same time when we are going to talk about grief.
Sometimes, like with last year when my parents died, everyone expected my mom to live much longer, but everyone's like, she died of a broken heart, because they were like married for so many years. But also, like, the way we can take grief, that phase of life, and we can use it as a platform to make it like great impact too. It is hard. Don't ever underplay that. But I also think it's an opportunity to love differently, in a different capacity. When you lose someone, when you do life without someone, is a different way of showing what they meant to you. So, like, for a lot of people, like, star soccer players, for example, they probably draw meaning from that loss, and they're like, I'm going to achieve this great thing because I want to honor my parents, for example, and that became his drive. So, I don't know. I think living it is different. I know Arwa is going to unpack a lot of the different theories that we can use to kind of evaluate the grief cycle. But I think deep down, those personal stories can be a source of empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a psychotherapist, how do you define grief, and what do you want people to understand about grief?
You want me to go with that one? So I think grief is a loss. It's not necessarily about somebody dying. But I hear this a lot, like now that I'm in my middle age, a lot of grief is about friendships, for example, or spaces we used to be, or grieving a profession. Maybe, we're upcoming for retirement, and we had this identity our whole life, and now we don't, and now we have to go reinvent ourselves. Sometimes grief is about, who I used to be, and who I am, or something to look forward to. Maybe like for a parent who loses a young child, for example, grieving that one day I would have been a grandmother, or I would have seen a wedding day, and now I don't get to do those things because here recently I've been hearing some younger funerals. So grief is very complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can't just you just have to hold space for that person to really get at what it means to them specifically.
Yeah.
We're all we're all grieving.
Yeah.
We're all going through a loss, right?
Yeah.
So how do you, in the therapeutic space, make that meaningful, purposeful, create action? Because some people slip into really deep depressive episodes because they're not able to pick themselves back up.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm gonna let you go into the specifics, and then we'll carry on.
Yeah. So I want to add to that, and kind of also agree with you about we lose maybe the person, or we lose maybe it's a dream, or aspects of our health, and we grieve that. We may grieve the person, we also grieve versions of ourselves that we won't be able to be anymore because the person is not there anymore. And it is very complex. I guess as a counselor, I view grief mainly from a perspective or a theory. In the psychological literature, it's called the dual process model of grief. And what it says is that there are two experiences that we go through when we grieve, whether that's a person or something. And the first process or experience is the grieving, and that's what we naturally think about. So there is the pain, the loss, the memories, and then we oscillate between that grieving process and the rebuilding of life, and that's when we are more present and we think about our present relationships. We may be forming new relationships and friendships. We may focus on our work. And we make meaning of the past relationships and how we want to move forward in life. And so we normally oscillate between those two modes in life. And so we don't just grieve and then we feel like we're healed and now we're building life, and then we never go back to grieve. We're always looking back and looking forward in life. And this process may continue with us for the rest of our lives in some of the significant attachments or relationships that we have. So like for people who've lost like family members, spouses, children, this process continues on. And then when we think about, so how do we, cope with the grief, we want to know, where are we? Are we in the grieving mode or in the rebuilding mode? Because if we're in that grieving mode and experience, what we want to do is loss-oriented coping. So we might want to cry, we might want to visit the grave, we might want to recall memories and process the emotions, all the feelings, reflect, and we mourn parts of our identity that we lose with that person. But if we are in the process of rebuilding life, we want to kind of restore and think about adjusting to life, focus on our current relationships, hobbies, find joy. Maybe we redefine our identities or goals in life. And so it's okay for somebody to be in the grieving mode or in the rebuilding mode. We don't want to rush somebody and be like, you're spending so much time kind of grieving, or how can you move on so quickly? We don't want to it varies from a person to the next, and we continue to oscillate between the two.
I love the way you break that down. I actually have a case right now where it's pretty fresh. The father passed away about 2 weeks ago. So I'm working with the mom and then the only daughter. And they're working like you said, in parallel. But with the only child, they've lost a parent, so a lot of family is coming over, and he's used to having more, or she's used to having more quiet time, and the mom is like, no, I need people around me. I don't want to be left alone. And then she's like, but how can you just get over my dad so quickly? You know, like the exact thing, like where one person is like, well, I don't want to completely unravel. I still got to raise this kid. So I need to keep it upbeat and keep this house like happy and moving, or, you know. And where the other person is just like, no, I want to cry. I want to cry and I want to grieve. But there's also, I think, clinical indicators, you know, when we look at grief. So if that phase of the what we call kind of despair, or the grieving the loss, is causing a person not to get up and go to work, or they are not sleeping, or they're just, I don't know, putting themselves in a room with pictures of that person and missing out on what is here and now in life for months on end, then you start kind of slipping into those risk factors of where the grieving process needs to be a little bit aided or helped.
So on a personal note, not personal level for myself, I don't know if this would be grief. I have both my parents, but I see the changes in them. I see them going through, obviously my mom's going through her own changes physically and mentally, and my dad also, like, I can see his age. He's at the hospital more, and I'm going through, I'm trying to say this without crying. This is raw stuff for you guys that are watching. Going through the stages of seeing them, you know, in like the ups and downs and the declines. And so is that part of grieving? Like, I already know that eventually it's going to happen, and it's getting more closer. And so my emotions are like, obviously, I don't know if it's hormones or what, but my emotions are just going up and down on the daily. So is that normal to, like, is that grieving?
Yeah, you're in active grief. Because you see this happens quite a bit with, you know, like cancer, for example, where you get a bad news and you're like, oh, your loved one has this many months to live, and you know that there is no going back. So I think especially in our age group, our parents are, you know, in that last phase of life. So you can start that process. Actually, it's very healthy. You know, I'm gonna, sorry, I hold myself together for the most part, but I remember, you know, when I saw my dad going through his decline. It was just a birthday party we had. It was just like we went to a Mexican restaurant and got the family together. But I hired a photographer. I would dress my, you know, towards the end, I would dress my dad. I'd bathe him, all that. And I put on a tuxedo for him because I'm like, that may be the last picture like that. But that was, you know, months before he actually passed. But yeah. So why don't you go on in the next thing?
We'll go on to the next question. Sorry, I can't see because my eyes are teary.
I love that, because grief doesn't mean, oh, the death certificate is you know, signed and here we are grieving. It's so all over the place. And it's so valid. You know.
So grief is universal, but the way people experience it is deeply personal. Why is it important to recognize that there is no single right way to grieve?
Right. There is not a single right way to grieve. Everybody goes through the process differently, and someone may be in that grieving mode, and then like a sibling will be in the rebuilding mode. Also, our like at different ages, we experience grief differently. So little kids may express their grief through play, and they may be asking questions not even related to the passing of a loved one. And then adolescents, they may have intense emotions. They may show indifference. It shows up differently. And then older adults, a lot of times, so it's impacted by how much grief adults go through. So we all are probably going through something and grieving something. And for example, the decline in health, and like an adult may start to be less independent, and losing people, friendship, loved ones. So there is a lot of loss, and also our experience, the way that we experience grief, the way we express it, whether we go and seek help or not, is impacted by a lot of other things, like our cultures, how we're raised, our different beliefs that we hold. And so it's very different and personal for everyone, and at the same time it's a universal experience that we all go through.
Yeah.
I love that you made a reference to the multi relational aspect of grief. Like one of the most common types of grief I treat in family therapy is where the person is living, but they're no longer a part of our life. And the literature actually says that, for example, divorce hits harder than the actual loss of a person. So where that person is still living and moving around on this earth, but you lose that part of yourself. Or sometimes it's a sibling. That's why in family therapy we say, if we can do anything to save relationships, we should. Even though sometimes you hear the words, oh, this is toxic, you're better off without this person or that person. But sometimes that person doesn't have a choice. It's a sibling with maybe severe mental illness or addiction, or it's a parent that abandons a child when they're very young. And so the grief is so complex, and each person is impacted on a day-to-day basis, and they're going through the loss, but it's never talked about or addressed, right?
Wow. Many people think of grief only as the loss of a loved one, like we just mentioned. Can you talk about the different types of losses that can create grief?
So people lose their pets, health, their jobs, friendships. Sometimes people lose their cultural identity, or even languages. Like I have a dear friend who spoke Spanish so fluently, and he had to go through chemo for cancer, and he he felt like he lost his language just going through the chemo treatment, and all the trauma of going through that, and so grieving that. So there are a lot of things that we can grieve, and sometimes when people move from one country to the next through immigration, they may feel like they're grieving the ties that they had back home, and then they're raising their kids in a new culture, new language, new everything, and they feel like they want to hold on to their roots, and so trying to kind of consolidate, being present with a new culture and also holding on to their roots.
I think that's a good capture. It's identity, it's relationships, who I could have been if I still had. And we kind of reflect, and we go through highs and lows, of how we feel, and some days we feel more like we've conquered it and we're over it, and then in certain days we kind of slip back into it, and that's why they like it's not a linear thing because you go in and out of it.
Yeah.
So, grief can show up as sadness, but also anger, numbness, anxiety, exhaustion, or feeling disconnected. What does grief look like? So, why does grief look so different from person to person?
Yeah. Again, kind of looking into, I guess, like, how significant is the loss that somebody is experiencing, and there are different things that influence also how we express, I guess, grief, and how we connect with people during like emotional pain. So it could be spiritual beliefs, it could be cultural, it could be the family that we're raised in. And again, like what, age group, how do we express it? Yeah.
Or interpretation, I think. Like for some of us, if we see someone in that stage of life, then we kind of look at our own life, and that creates a sense of urgency. Oh my gosh, I don't know, haven't seen the Eiffel Tower, or I still need to do X, Y, and Z, like, wow, life is so precious. It could just be gone in front of your eyes. So it could create an urgency and put us into action, where we live more intentionally. And then for some people, it's like, no, maybe we've been moving too much and not had enough reflection and introspection. So we're like, maybe I want to turn to my faith. Maybe I want to kind of dive into my soul a little bit, because grief does push us in that direction sometimes. Or you can have a combination. I've noticed myself, I'm listening to very old, like kind of folklore, traditional Persian music, like my dad would chant. And I used to be like, Baba, turn that off, please. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's all in my feed. I like to be by myself and listen to that stuff because it's a reminder. And then I also have the agency. I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot to be done with this life. So let me get on it, right?
Yeah.
So I have a mix, my team witnesses this on, where I kind of go in and out of my phase, because I had to grieve both parents in the same span of time. But it's not time limited. I feel like there's so many ways I want to honor them that I'm not going to be done at the end of the year. These are just kind of standards. But I've got so many plans, right? And that's where I feel like grief can also be a positive thing, because it can be a constant reminder of love and gratitude. Like, I may have lost, but look what I had, right? And then look what they gave me, all the tools and everything I need to do so much more with what I've got left on this earth.
Right. So. Yeah. There used to be this thought about healing from grief, meaning like detachment, and for one to kind of sever themselves from their loved one so they can use their energy and like invest it in new relationships and things like that. But there was this idea of like what you're mentioning, like in the literature they call it continuing bonds. So like when someone passes away, the relationship doesn't end. Physically it does, but internally it doesn't, and it turns into like this internal relationship that we continue with the person. We may even like celebrate the person's birthday and honor their their values. We may like reflect on that and carry their values forward with us. And they found that a lot of times when people grieve this way, by carrying the person in their heart and even like sometimes having a conversation with them in one's thoughts, there is less anxiety and there is less guilt compared to when people try to just like, it ended, that's it, and like moving forward. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll continue this conversation. You're listening to 103.5 Hum FM. Welcome back to Chai Time here on 103.5 Hum FM. For those of you that have just tuned in, we are in conversation with Mahtab and Arwa on grief and healing from it. So, what are some ways people can support someone who is grieving without trying to rush them through the process? Now, that's a very good question, if I should say so myself.
Yes. Yeah, I would say be there, listen, validate their feelings, and try to support them. And if you don't know what to do or what to say, it's okay to go up to them and say, "Hey, I really care about you. Like, I wanna support you. I don't know what to do. How can I support you? Can I like cook you a meal or buy you a meal or do something?" And kind of be open to listening. Like maybe they want to share some memories or stories. Just be open to it. Be present with the person. So yeah, and then for the person who is grieving, also be open to sharing what is going on and what you need from others when they try to help you. Be open to receive that help and support. And if you feel like going to therapy, maybe that's a good thing to either see a therapist or maybe a support group for people who are going through the same experience, so they can kind of people can understand each other. They're going through a similar thing, so they don't feel alone in the experience and not isolated in this experience.
I've seen two types of people that have grieved differently. One has gone into a shell where they don't even want to talk about it. They don't want to mention it, nothing. And then I've seen another person that is very like open to sharing, like you said, stories and want to speak about them and honor their memory in any way possible. So why are there two different types of people? Like why do some of them just want to like go in a cocoon and not like?
So, I mean, emotions, I think personality profiles sometimes determine that. Like, even if you look at, let's say, the stages of falling in love or in young adulthood when we're launching, some people are all about sharing and maybe oversharing. And some people, you just kind of get to save the date and you're like, how did this person, where were you? How did this happen?
Yeah.
So I think we vary in terms of how safe we feel, because oftentimes grief being such a heavy emotion that we're not used to managing. So if you're going through it, you fear, oh my God, what am I going to come across? The person is going to ruin the party because I'm going to start shedding tears and talking about like my lost, what I've lost. So people that I love may move away from me because now there's this dark thing following me. So it's a risk. It's an emotional risk that not everybody feels comfortable with. So in our line of work, some of the best thing I think that happens in therapy and in the coaching spaces is that we teach ourselves and we teach each other about emotional safety, because it's almost like this platform to carry these things, whether it's great news like I met the love of my life or I have lost everything and I'm so vulnerable and I fear every fear under the sun and being abandoned or not liked. So I think that's why people approach it differently, because of judgment too.
That makes sense. How do culture, family, spirituality, and community influence the way people experience and express grief?
Yeah, so in some cultures, grief is more of a communal experience. So the whole community grieves with one person, and in some cultures, it's more of an individual experience. and people, grieve together, and they like through ceremonies and storytelling, and those things are so important for healing. When the community or the family comes together and share a meal and share stories, that really helps people feel like they're not alone in their pain and their suffering, and that there are other people to carry this pain with them. And also, like, the values that we hold influence the way that we express our pain, and the way that we connect with others during the time of pain. And so, collective mourning, prayers, music, sharing meals, spiritual traditions are all things that help with healing from grief.
Mm-hmm. And a constant reminder that there's greater things than what we're going through. Sometimes we often think, oh my God, I'm the only one going through this. But that shared space is very therapeutic. It literally lightens up your load.
I remember when again, I'm going back to my grandma, when she passed away, once all the ceremonies and everything was done, we all just kind of sat around the sofa and shared stories about her and, all the funny things that she used to do. And so that was very healing in a sense that, although she's gone, but her memory still lives on, right? So that was just, for me, it was very nice, like just to have that with all of the loved ones of that loved her, and just to share stories. So
that's so beautiful.
That was very healing. For sure.
I love that.
Some people experience grief related to losses that others may not see or recognize, such as a loss of identity, belonging, health, safety, or cultural connections. Can you speak about these less visible forms of grief?
I think that's where, when we talked earlier, I'm like, everyone's grieving something.
Yes, you did say that.
That's a classic way of we're always in transition, which means when you move towards something, you're moving away from something. So that's another reason why in counseling we say, when is a good time to go get counseling? During life transitions, right? Even becoming a new mom. You're grieving that girl that got to sleep until 11 a.m. Or sometimes I tell my kids, like, I wasn't this. I was like, no, I was not this person. Go back 30 years and I'll show you pictures.
Maybe.
That's a sign of like, you're grieving, right? Like, you were somebody's little girl and had everything handed to you, and now you're slaving. You're getting 4 hours of sleep. You have to cook and clean and Uber and everything. So that's a type of grief. Or when I work with refugees, you're like, this was very impactful actually the other night at one of the interfaith ministries. I'm doing this pilot group, men's support group, to make a space for this dialogue. And this one guy, he's like, it didn't hit me until that moment. I got my first job, and I should have been grateful to have that job as the doorman. And then I got yelled at because I didn't get out of my seat quick enough to open the door. And I was a general, and people were opening doors for me. And there's something about the way he said it, like, me, it doesn't take a lot for me to cry, but I was like, oh my God, that is like, for him to say that, talk about grieving, right? And then living with the new realities. And so I know every person in their own might is going through something that was meaningful to them that may no longer be there. So they're missing that person or that thing, that experience, the identity. And then young people, college age, they're constantly with these fast moving, their world, they're grieving like who they could be, and we're so we're so plugged in that we don't have enough of a pause to even recognize what is not there with us. So
Right.
I think it's all over the place, if you ask me.
Yeah.
All you have to do is like talk for 3 minutes with someone, and they're
Yeah.
going through something
Yeah.
that's unique to them.
Yeah. Yeah, there is also some grief that comes when people experience things like discrimination, historical trauma, being separated from their families, things that we don't like even get to talk about when it comes to grief, infertility, divorces, breakups, friendships, breakups as well. There is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you hear the word grief, it's always associated with the loss, but you don't it doesn't register that you're like you said, you're grieving every day. There's something that you grieve about, or someone that is grieving about something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with someone passing
Even like
away.
a bagel shop, I was devastated. Like my whole life in Clear Lake, I had this one bagel shop, and you don't understand. I cried. I'm I'm a committed customer. Like I'll order the same thing. I like to see the same smile. I miss that lady that worked there. I miss the smells, and that routine.
Yeah.
And my kids thought I was so Mom, I've never seen you so upset over. I'm like, not only I get excited when businesses thrive, like around where I live, and I'm like, we gotta go support. I know we have coffee at home, but we need to go and support. The people who this is their business.
Right.
So there was that level, and then there was the selfish component.
You're missing those bagels. That's so cute.
Yeah.
Many people have heard of 5 stages of grief. Can you explain this theory?
Yeah, so the 5 stages of grief include denial, that's where it starts. And then there is anger, the person becomes angry, like, why did, my loved one has to die, maybe angry at God, why did they have to die? There is bargaining, thinking about, if only I called them more or checked in on them more, this wouldn't have happened. And then there is depression and acceptance. And a lot of people have heard about the cycle of grief or the stages of grief. But I want to say that it's not a linear sequence. People can move back and forth between the different stages. So if somebody feels depressed and then they feel angry after that is okay, because it's not meant to be a linear process, and also it's more like waves rather than stages, because every wave is different. Some waves are small, some are big. It reaches a peak, just kind of like emotions, and then it crashes and dissipates, and we go through it, but another wave is gonna come, and and maybe big or small, quick or slow, and so those are the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah, I mean that's so true. You're gonna be. It's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
One measure I like to think is that when you can talk about that person, and you have this kind of mixture of I want to cry because they're not here, but I'm also smiling because I'm so glad that I had that opportunity.
Yeah.
Or even how you show up. Today is the death anniversary of one of our colleagues. Her dad died exactly 1 year ago, and so I'm I don't know. Will you call in on Monday, or will you want to be at your dad's grave, or you want to come and be at 30%, 70%? We don't know. But holding that space for somebody to be able to do what they need to do to honor themselves.
Yeah.
I think there should be fluidity. I didn't need my entire, bereavement leave. For me, it actually worked to be distracted by something busy. I think I did data for the first 2 months, and I'm like, wow, this is weird. If I'm loving data, this is weird, right? Because I'm more of a people's person. But being in a very detailed task and having to be productive, it made me feel good. It worked in that phase of my grief, right? So it's just kind of building intentionality around it, being unique to yourself, being able to ask, like, what does support look like to you in this moment? Maybe the first week is, can somebody just feed me? Or can someone watch my kid so I can just cry my eyes out? Like building these healthy relationships so that we can make the right asks. And then human being, we're here together. We're supposed to help each other out. And that means different things for people.
Some people feel like a sense of guilt if they like engage in something after the loss of a loved one, and they feel like I'm not grieving the correct way, but it's like everybody grieves differently, and like it's like what I want, I guess, our listeners to hear is like to not, I guess, shame anyone or rush anyone who's going through grief and is dealing with it the way that works for them. And that could be working, that could be engaging in like their hobbies or connecting with people, or some people want to spend some time alone to reflect on the relationship, the life of the loved one. And so it's different for everyone, so we should
be respectful.
Be respectful, embrace it, and be supportive.
Many people feel guilty when they experience moments of happiness, laughter, or relief after a loss. Why does this happen, and what would you say to someone feeling guilt?
Kind of like what we're just saying. And also that person may be in that rebuilding experience, so like if my sister and I experience grief, I may spend more time, for example, grieving, and she may move to the rebuilding, and she needs to feel that joy, like her body, her mind would know what to do, would know how to oscillate between the different experiences, and what we want to do is support the person, and kind of let them be in that stage, of course, as long as like they didn't stop eating or sleeping, and they're not totally isolated and thinking about dying themselves. We want to support them and kind of just understand what they're going through.
I love that.
What would you say to someone who feels they are grieving the wrong way, or that they should be further along in their healing?
I would never say that, because like Arwa said, we are not the expert. We're just navigating. Especially with something like this. Now, I would say, if somebody is just completely shut down for, 5 years, which we've had clients that are just like the last 10 years, like the last case you had. So you would just kind of help them come up with this next, what does it look like to be embracing the next stage, or what's holding you back, maybe, right? And this person had a child and a spouse within the same year or something, like. So it was a big loss, and so helping normalize what the patient's going through, but at the same time saying, like, these are the indicators we're like thriving for, like to get you back to where you're making memories. Like, look at the people that you have left here, right, that you can be building memories with. And then helping them find their own answers, essentially.
And finding communities also for people who are experiencing the same thing, or grief.
Like Bo's Place is a great grief. They specialize in grief support groups. They've been around for many, many years.
we are actually at the end of our segment, unfortunately. But thank you, ladies, for coming here today and sharing this topic that obviously we need to talk more about and spread more awareness about, because grief is real and we do definitely need to talk about it more. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in here with us on 103.5 Hum FM with your Chai Time Girls. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Bye.
Thank you.